In 1995, a man walked into two Pittsburgh banks in broad daylight, robbed them both, and smiled directly into the security cameras on his way out. No mask, no disguise, just his face. He was arrested that same night. When police showed him the footage, he was genuinely shocked. Not because he'd been caught, because he'd been seen. He told investigators he had rubbed lemon juice on his face before the robbery. He'd heard somewhere that lemon juice was used in invisible ink, so he figured, logically, that if he covered his skin in it, the security cameras wouldn't be able to capture his image. He was not drunk. He was not on drugs. His name was MacArthur Wheeler, and by every external measure, he was a functioning adult with a complete, coherent theory about how reality worked. The theory was completely wrong. And here is the thing that made two psychologists sit up straight when they heard this story. It wasn't the plan that fascinated them. It was something Wheeler said afterward when they tried to explain why the cameras had, in fact, captured him perfectly. He kept saying he didn't understand it. Not the science, the outcome. He couldn't understand how he had been so confident and so wrong at the exact same time. That question, how does someone not know what they don't know, turned into one of the most replicated findings in the history of psychology. The two psychologists were David Dunning and Dunning-Kruger. They were at Cornell. And when they read about MacArthur Wheeler in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Dunning didn't laugh. He pulled the article out and handed it to Kruger and said something like, "This is a real phenomenon. We should study it." So they did. In 1999, they ran 4 experiments. Not simulations, not surveys, actual tests. They gave a group of Cornell undergraduates a logic exam. Then they asked each student to estimate how well they had done, compared to everyone else in the room. The results were not a surprise exactly, but seeing them laid out in data was something else. The students who scored in the bottom quarter, the ones who got the most answers wrong, believed they had scored in the top half. Not the top quarter, the top half. They overestimated their performance by almost 30 percentile points. And here's the thing that still gets me about this. They weren't being arrogant. They weren't pretending. They genuinely believed it. They had done the test, checked their answers, felt confident, and arrived at a completely wrong self-assessment with zero awareness that anything was off. Dunning and Kruger called it a dual burden. The knowledge you need to answer a question correctly is the exact same knowledge you need to know your answer was wrong. If you don't have it, you fail twice. You get it wrong, and you don't know you got it wrong. Now stop for a second, because this is where most people hear about the Dunning-Kruger effect and immediately do something very specific. They think of someone they know, a coworker, a relative, that one guy on the internet who won't stop telling people how to invest. You can probably picture the face right now. And that's the trap, because Dunning spent the next 2 decades studying this, and the one thing he kept coming back to was this. The effect is not about other people. It is not a fixed personality trait. It is a condition of ignorance. And ignorance is something every single person carries in some room of their life. There is a domain, some subject, some skill, some relationship, where you are MacArthur Wheeler, where your confidence is clean and complete and built on nothing. Dunning himself said this. He said he's terrified by how often he catches it in himself. That's the version of the story nobody tells. But let's go deeper, because the finding about low performers was only half of what they published. The top scorers did something almost as strange. They consistently underestimated themselves. The students who aced the test thought they'd done okay, not great. They assumed the exam was easier than it was. They looked at their own performance, shrugged, and figured everyone else must have done roughly the same. They were wrong in the opposite direction. Dunning and Kruger had a name for this too, the curse of knowledge. When you actually understand something deeply, you lose the ability to remember what it felt like not to understand it. Everything that was once hard becomes obvious, and because it feels obvious to you, you assume it's obvious to everyone. This is why expert communicators are rare, and why brilliant people are often terrible teachers. The curve looks like a mountain. You start knowing nothing. Your confidence is low. You begin learning and your confidence explodes faster than your actual skill, and you reach this peak of maximum confidence with minimum competence.
Then reality hits. You realize how much you don't know. Your confidence crashes into a valley. And if you keep going, if you do the work of getting genuinely good at something, your confidence climbs back up, slowly, grounded this time, tethered to actual ability. Most people never get off the mountain. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. In 2006, Dunning and colleague Joyce Erringer ran a follow-up experiment. They brought in a group of students, gave them a science quiz, and then immediately offered them the chance to enter a science competition. The women in the study underestimated their quiz performance by 15%. The men were almost exactly accurate. But here's what actually happened. The women and men had scored identically on the quiz. Same answers, same results. Completely different self-assessment. And the women, because they believed they'd performed worse, were far less likely to sign up for the competition. Dunning sat with that finding for a long time, because what it meant was this: the effect doesn't just live in overconfidence, it lives in underconfidence too. And underconfidence has a cost you can measure. It's the competition you don't enter, the raise you don't ask for, the idea you assume isn't good enough to say out loud. The version of the Dunning-Kruger effect that the internet loves, the arrogant idiot on the mountain, is only half the picture. The other half is the person who is quietly more capable than they will ever believe, sitting in the back row, not raising their hand. So what actually causes this? Why does the brain do this to us? Here's the simple version. Your brain cannot monitor itself from the outside. It can't watch itself thinking and simultaneously check whether the thinking is any good. You are always evaluating the world from inside the same skull that's doing the evaluating. Dunning called this the problem of metacognition, thinking about thinking. Most people, most of the time, don't do it. Not because they're lazy, because the brain's default state is confidence. Doubt is effortful. Confidence is free. And this creates a specific kind of problem in specific kinds of environments. Anywhere that expertise slows to develop, politics, nutrition, economics, relationships, the confidence gap runs wild because the feedback is slow, ambiguous, or just never comes. You can be completely wrong about how to eat for 40 years and never get a clear signal that says you're wrong. So the confidence sits there, unchallenged, unearned, quietly catastrophic. And somewhere on the other side of that, someone who has actually done the work, studied the thing, lived inside the complexity of it, is sitting quietly, not sure they're qualified to speak. That inversion might be the most important thing David Dunning ever found. The people who should be talking aren't. The people who shouldn't can't stop. He ran the study in 1999. We're still living in the results. The lemon juice is still on our faces, and most of us don't know it yet.